What is gender? Gender is the cultural attribution that one identifies with. Gender roles that society constructs are learned by individuals over time. Gender ideals can vary from culture to culture. But then how do we know the difference between boys and girls? Sex. Sex can be defined as the scientific answer to the question of male or female. Biological sex is determined by a number of factors: chromosomal sex, hormonal sex, gonadal sex, genital sex, reproductive sex, and internal organs. But every day there are people who are born who are not just male and not just female. They're somewhere in between. Throughout history, societies have constructed ideals of gender, and when those ideals do not conform to the existing gender structures, they create a new category: the third gender. The general definition of people of the third gender is intersex. A person who is intersex is someone who's in between being male and female. They could be one of many things, but a few common terms are hermaphrodite, transsexual, and transgender. A hermaphrodite is someone who has both male and female reproductive organs as well as sexual characteristics. A transgendered person is someone who changes from one gender to the other or identifies with a gender that is opposite to their biological sex. A transsexual person is a person who identifies with the biologically opposite sex and might choose to get a sex change operation. When a third gender is constructed, those individuals are usually intermediaries between the realms of men and women. Their roles reflect the core values of their societies. When a third gender is not constructed, there is a need for those individuals to conform to the existing gender structure. In Pakistani India, the constructed third gender was called a hijra. Hijras were intersex people whose gender was ambiguous from birth or were transsexual. Hijras were generally thought of as being without sex. They were their own caste and group of religious officials. Hinduism and Islam were practiced in India at the time. Both religious cultures had a part in constructing the gender identity of Hijras. Many Hijras practiced Islam while being a part of Hindu rituals and holding Hindu cultural values. Hijras played an important role in religious festivals and ceremonies. They were called to bless a home, a marriage, and a newborn. The explanation for why Hijras were more powerful is because that Allah did not bless them with the ability to have children, so he blessed them with a special place in society. As well as being a special religious guild, Hijras were part of the court and could intermediate between the male and female private realms. Hijras guarded the harems of the Indian court as well as serving in court proceedings. The roles of the constructed third gender in India reflected their society's core values. They valued religious devotion and the maintaining of the social order. By being intermediaries, Hijras were maintaining social order as well as creating another place for religion in their society. In imperial China, the third gender was called a eunuch. Eunuchs were castrated males employed to guard and serve at the imperial palace. Eunuchs guarded the private women's quarters and personally served the king and other prominent members of the court. The process of a castration was to ensure that eunuchs would have no motivation to overthrow the existing power structure, because they could not pass on their wealth or begin a dynasty. It was also important that eunuchs were castrated because it ensured the paternity of any royal heirs born in the palace. Ensuring ancestry was essential to continue the dynastic rule of the Chinese Empire. Many eunuchs were scholars and advisors to the king and rose to high positions of power. In China, the emperor represented the god's presence on earth. Eunuchs had the responsibility to guide an emperor's way and make sure he did not jeopardize his ability to rule, as well as shield the public from any wrongdoings or failings. They also had access to the human side of the emperor and many other high-ranking officials. Eunuchs provided an essential role in government and were intermediaries between male and female private lives. Their gender identity reflected the Chinese values of social and governmental order. The Zuni Native American tribe constructed a third gender called a Berdachie. Berdachis are people of any sex who choose to take on the dress of the opposite gender. In Zuni culture, one was born with a gender according to their sex, but could choose a different role if they did not feel like their sex. Women were in charge of food production as well as the domestic realm and childcare. Men were in charge of religious rituals, being warriors, and for the most part, building homes. Their gender identified which jobs they performed in the community as well as how they dressed, but really, not much else. By choosing your gender, you were choosing which group of people you wished to identify with. Bardachis were often looked upon as good luck, and they were praised for their ability. Bardachis who chose to take women's dress were also highly valued because they did not need to take any time off for childbirth and could help raise children as well as performing regular tasks. The Zuni people respected those who were generous, kind, and had a yielding disposition. All these qualities were beneficial to the larger community. They discouraged traits like intensive loyalty, ambition, and leadership. Bardachis reflect the values of Zuni culture because they work towards the greater good of the community. When third genders are not constructed, however, there is need to correct those who do not fit into the existing gender structure. During the turn of the century, Enlightenment ideals encouraged a new, rational, and logical look at the world. It also maintained that all things about life could be measured and categorized. Social constructions about gender shifted in turn with this philosophy. Gender roles became much more rigid, and there was really only room to be either male or female. These ideals persisted, and in the 1950s, the US and Canada created laws that said when a child's genitalia is ambiguous, it must be corrected or reconstructed to be either a penis or a vagina. This law still persists. Most children with ambiguous genitalia are assigned to be female, because it is easier to reconstruct a vagina than it is to create a penis. Many people take issue with this policy and do not agree with one's gender should be decided by law. They think gender should be decided by the person. The fact that we do not have a third gender shows the ideals of enlightenment still persist today.